This is Ron Reed here in Japan. This is from March the 1st. These are stories making headlines around the world. First, Switzerland ends decades of neutrality in the Putin response. Since launching Russia's invasion into Ukraine, Vladimir Putin and his country have faced intense global backlash, ranging from sports and culture to crippling economic sanctions. There's also a news story, this is among 5 stories, where Ukraine citizens are taking action and helping in the war effort. A second story comes out, how to support the people of the Ukraine right now. The third story comes with a rocker urges people to blast his defiant anthem. The fourth story talks about a poll shows a major shift in the GOP opinion on the Ukraine war. And the fifth story, Putin's fears are becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, fast. The financial news also talks about the heightened risk amid inflation, the Fed rate hikes, and the Russian-Ukrainian war, says a strategist. And turning to Canadian news that's overlooking what's going on in the war. Canada is sending anti-tank weapons systems, ammunition to Ukraine, says Trudeau. Canada will send a third shipment of lethal weapons to Ukraine as its military continues to fight off better armed Russian forces, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said. Other news in Canada related to the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. Talks to end fighting between Russia and the Ukraine end with no substantial agreement. A third item talks about the Russians are feeling the impact of Western sanctions, says reporter. And you can see in this video report there is a long queue of people waiting for something. In the fourth story by Sports at CBC, Wickenheiser, among dozens of Canadian athletes demanding the IOC boot out Russia. In more sports-related news, from the pitch to the front lines, Winnipeg goalkeeper enlists with the Ukraine Armed Forces. This is in Manitoba. In more sports news, IIHF suspends Russia, Belarusian teams amid ongoing military invasion of the Ukraine. More than 500,000 people have fled Ukraine, with many waiting for days at the border's crossing. In photos, the scene in besieged Ukrainian cities as Ukrainian-Russian delegations meet. And I think that already resulted in a kind of stalemate. Finally, in more news, 400,000 flee in Ukraine without husbands, fathers who stayed behind to fight. There's another story about Vladimir Zelensky going from he was a comic to wartime president in the Ukraine. And finally, there's some other last news. Sanctioning Vladimir Putin and Russia's billionaire oligarchs. And also a video story that recently just came out for near March the 1st, preparing to fight for Ukraine. Also, another story, Russian teams suspended from international soccer. The Russian airline Aeroflot violated Canadian airspace after ban, Transport Canada says. And IOC proposes expulsion of Russia-Belarusian athletes from international events. And I think, a NATO deputy says, an ex-NATO deputy says, Russia unlikely to deploy nukes in the Ukraine conflict. And lastly, Wayne Gretzky calls for Russia to be banned from the rescheduled World Juniors. That's the news for today. My name is Ron Reed here in Tokyo. Thank you very much. Have a great day.